And here I am. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Women in Transition. I am your host, Dr. Sasheen. Hopefully, y'all can hear me okay. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. So, welcome back to the podcast. If you are listening and not watching, thank you so much for your time, your energy as you listen to my voice along whatever pathways you're getting me: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spreaker, iHeartRadio. I love that. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello and welcome to the podcast where we drop a new episode at least every Thursday, sometimes multiple times a week. So, Women Transition is a podcast for Gen X women who are ready to live their next best chapter of life and who are practicing rule number one. And rule number one is our peace is non negotiable. So, what are we talking about today? Let me tell you, we are talking about something that's very important, especially given some of the things that are happening in the world. So, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, in particular, if you live in the United States, there are a couple elections happening uh, in the past couple days. And there's been a few, there have been a lot of conversations about the activities of my country. Underneath those conversations are a lot of questions about point and purpose. Um, on a bigger scale, right? Like, what is the purpose and what is the point of many, many things? And I find that that question is always interesting because there's an entire industry built on trying to help people find their point, right? Their purpose in life. It's the self-help industry, not the psychological industry, the self-help industry, which is on task to be like $1 billion industry, if not more. And in that industry, there's a lot of confusion about purpose. Like, why are we here is the question a lot of people are really trying to answer. On the macro level, our purpose, what are we doing here, is being answered by people who don't actually have your best interest at heart because your purpose and their purpose are not aligned. Okay, so they're just simply not aligned. At the micro level, the idea of purpose is used as a selling point, as a selling tool to help convince you to buy someone's program or self-help book or engage in activities that don't actually serve your purpose at all, but they make somebody a lot of money. Why am I talking about this today? I'm talking about this today because the world as we know it is changing. Culturally speaking, a lot of people, a lot of cultures have had and have had a very clear sense of their purpose as a people, a collective people, even if individually sometimes people weren't quite sure where they fit into that purpose, but eventually they figured it out, right? They figured out who they were going to be in the culture that they were in. As modernity has progressed and people have become more fragmented and cultures have become less insular, the idea of purpose has also become more fragmented. And into that fragmentation have come what I like to call a bunch of folks who have convinced people that they don't know what their purpose is, but if they just follow this 9-step program, they will find it in the end, which is fascinating. Because if that were the case, then at the end of those 9-step programs, people would have their purpose figured out and they could go on to live a life that they felt good about. And instead, what happens is that people don't have their purpose after those 9 steps. So they buy the next book. And then the book doesn't help them figure out their purpose. So then they buy the next program. And then the next program doesn't help them figure out their purpose. So then they sign up for the fill in the blank, right? And I know this is going to seem strange coming from a woman who's talking about improving your life to make your next best chapter great. But Gen X women are primed for the question of what is my purpose? Because we're leaving one very distinct chapter of our lives and we're moving into another very distinct chapter. A lot of us, not all of us, but a great deal of us are thinking about what's next job-wise, family-wise, health-wise. We're in perimenopause, maybe through menopause, maybe just starting. Um, so there's a lot of questions that that we are going to ask that revolve around what is my purpose at this point in my life? In this chapter, what is my purpose? And I think that it's important to have the conversation about how it's really less about purpose. A lot of people are are divorced from their purpose, not because they don't necessarily know what their purpose is or could be, but because they've been told they don't know what their purpose is or could be. Right? Like they've been told that there's something inherently broken in the human experience. And so, since there's something inherently broken, you can't know what you're really here to do. You have to go find someone to tell you what it is that you're supposed to do with yourself. And after someone tells you or gives you the program or the book or whatever, then you'll figure out how you fit into the purpose of the program or the book or the person that you're following. And then that becomes your purpose, which is all well and good until you start asking questions. Because what if that purpose that you've been following doesn't never really fit you right? Well, I'm here to argue that I don't know that people ever really lose their purpose. I think if we remember ourselves as small kids, and I'm not talking about super small because I don't know that we know a whole lot about what we're doing between the ages of 0 and 5. But if you think about when you were 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, when you were like hormones are raging, bodies are changing, consciousness is just really starting to burgeon, right? They're feeling like I'm separate from others. That's the beginning of our understanding of what we're about in the world, how we move through the world. And like I said, in the past, experience and where we grew up helped us to cement our purpose by virtue of what was happening around us, who we lived with, how we did life. And our purpose as part of a tribe was pretty cut and dried. And that didn't mean that our job was our purpose. It meant that we understood our place in the bigger cosmos, in the bigger scheme of life. Well, with fragmentation, industrialization, movement, assimilation, migration, immigration, wars, not wars, famines, droughts, people had to move. People have moved around. People have had to adjust. And so we find ourselves in 2026 with a whole bunch of people who don't know what their purpose is because they don't know who they're attached to because there is no attachment anymore. And so into that kind of vacuum of lack of attachment has come an entire industry of people and movements to say, "Hey, let me give you a purpose and show you how you fit into my bigger scheme of things." And I think that's okay, but I think it's important, especially when you go through transitions and hard times and you start questioning what it really means to be a part of something bigger than yourself, that you ask yourself a very simple question. What what is the something bigger that I'm trying to be a part of, and is it mine? Is it really my something bigger that I need to be a part of? Or is my purpose something else entirely? Is my purpose something simpler, something softer, something less efficient, less nine-steppy, right? Maybe your purpose is to be messy and to live a life that is full of color and messiness and soft edges and jagged cliffs. Or maybe your purpose is to find places to bring peace in the world. And I'm not talking about um, historical figures who peddled peace for other purposes. What I'm talking about is the sense of your life that guides you through the decisions that you make. That's what our purpose is. It's the sense of who we are, our who we are in this life, and then that guiding the decisions that we're going to make. The problem is who we are in this life is so out of focus for most people that they spend entirely too much time and money just trying to figure that piece out. I would argue that the therapy industry should be a lot more lucrative than the self-help industry. But I'm not gonna bag on self-help completely because I do think it has its place. I absolutely think it has its place. But I do want to talk to you about why you never actually lost the purpose of who you are. You know what you're here to do. It's not out outside of you. And I think because we have placed so much of our locus of control of our lives outside of ourselves, we forget that we have a lot of our own internal locus of control just waiting for us to tap into it. So, what do I mean by that? What I mean is this: today, whatever the date is, I think it's March 5th. If I were to ask you, what are you doing here? And why are you doing it? A lot of people are going to default to, well, I'm doing this because I have to feed my family, or I'm doing this because this is where I was born, or I'm doing this because this is the life that I was supposed to live, because this is my education. And then I would ask you again, but what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And as I ask that question multiple times, eventually it's going to become harder to answer. And that is where you start to find the real purpose of what it is you're supposed to be doing with the rest of your life. What are you doing here? And what are you going to be doing in that next best chapter of your life that's right in front of you? What are you doing here? Now, for some people, this is going to be answered in spiritual terms. For some people, it's going to be answered in scientific terms. For some people, it's going to be answered in metaphysical terms. For some people, it's going to be answered in poetic terms. Do you see where I'm going with this? However, you need to get to that answer isn't lost to you. It's right there inside of you. But because we look for outside influences to tell us what's most important about who we are, what our purpose is, we really like people to tell us what to do. We don't listen, and we don't listen to our own internal compass saying, but this is not your North Star, beloved. This is not the direction that you should be going. And if you would just stop and listen to me, I will tell you that. But we don't stop and listen. We run around and we run away, because when we stop and we realize we never lost the purpose of our lives. It just got buried under a bunch of um, other folks' purposes and responsibilities for us. Then we also have a really large question to answer, which is, so why do you keep doing that? So why do you keep doing that? Why do you keep living a purpose that literally is not your own, and that might be diametrically opposed to the one that you're supposed to be living? And then someone will say, but how do I know the one I'm supposed to be living? And the answer is, what does your internal compass say? Whether that answer comes to you through spirituality, metaphysics, science, poetry, what you see, I'm going, the answer to the question is inside you. How you get there is up to you. What speaks to you and what speaks to your purpose is where you will find that answer. But what you cannot do is find that answer insisting that someone else continue to tell you what your purpose is. I've worked many jobs, many jobs. I like to say that I have truly been a Renaissance woman. I've worked so many kinds of jobs. I've lived in many different kinds of places, and I'm not done yet. But along the way of untethering myself from things that were familiar to me, right? Things that are very comfortable and familiar. When you begin to untether from that, you have to find out really quickly, what is the purpose of my life here? Like, what am I doing? Because you can't just coast through life without figuring out who or what you're supposed to be doing. That is a recipe for some really bad living. But what you do, or what a lot of people do, those who aren't, just coasting through life, the journey becomes an exercise in the purpose of your life, right? Like we find it so wild when people will do something so completely out of the norm of our own existence, and we think to ourselves, wow, that is, that person is XYZ ABC, whatever we need to fill in the blank to make us okay with not doing it. They're special, they're different, they're unique, they've always been a rebel, whatever it is. Instead, we might just ask ourselves, what is the purpose of their life that lets them do that? What is the purpose? What is the purpose that they understand about themselves and their life, that course of action feels right to them? And then we should turn that question to ourselves and go, what is the purpose of my life that this course of action feels right to me? What is the purpose of my life that this course of action that I have chosen to take, that I've chosen to be a part of, that I've chosen to walk, is the one that works for me? And if the answer to that is, I don't really know what the purpose of my life is that makes this version of life okay, then maybe that's the time to ask the question of, so whose purpose of life are you living then? Because if you don't know what your purpose is and why this version of life supports it, then maybe perhaps, just going to go out on a limb, perhaps it's not your purpose. And your purpose is something else entirely. And it's not lost, it's not out of reach, it's simply up under somebody else's. And it may be time to get a shovel and start excavating it. As we approach different chapters, as we stand on the cusp of one existence to another. And we do this many times in our life. Preteens into teenagers, teenagers into young adults into older adults, older adults into middle life adults into older adults, right? Single into married, if that's the direction you choose to go. Artist into business, business into artist. Like we stand on cusps of chapters so many times. And on those cusps are the questions of, what am I supposed to do here? And part of that answer for people who are looking or living in the purpose that they feel is their own is to continue to make sure that the reason that they are here is evident. Whether that reason takes them far afield into the Amazon where they're working to you know save the forest, whether it takes them into classrooms as a teacher, whether it puts them on a stage at the Grammys. The purpose of their existence is right there in front of them. It is to fill in the blank. And it's not given to them by somebody else. It isn't foisted upon them by somebody else. It isn't buried under somebody else's purpose. It is their own. I was watching the SAG Awards, which are not called the SAGs anymore. They're called the Actors Awards. And I was listening to not to Michael B. Smith, excuse me, Michael B. Johnson. Woo! Okay, like I got too many Michaels in my head. Accept his award, the actor for lead actor. And he was thanking his mom, he was thanking, Ryan Coogler, he was thanking the cast, and he was talking about being a kid, right? He's talking about being a kid and his mom driving him to uh, um, interviews, or excuse me, to auditions, and if they couldn't afford to go through the Holland Tunnel, and I mean, all this great story, right? As I'm listening to the story, was thinking to myself, here's a man whose career has been decidedly an exercise in purpose, in understanding why he is living the way he is, why he is choosing the way he is. Because if you look at his career as a whole, not just Sinners, but his entire career, the trajectory and the choices, and this is really important, the choices that he has made for the roles that he has chosen to play. In his younger career, I'm fairly certain he probably took the roles that allowed him to get his name out there. Like I get that. But when you get more agency in the thing that you're doing, then you get to make some choices. And I am fairly certain that he had the opportunity, the option to take roles that would have taken him away from his purpose. Because if you look at his career, Michael has played very informed Black characters, right? In contexts that celebrate the Blackness of his characters. And that is a choice that has come through role after role after role, right? That is a decision that could have locked him out of certain accolades in Hollywood. um the choices that actors make for the roles that they play, some can make a choice to go the way that says you'll work, but you may not like all the roles that you have to play, but you'll work. And some can make the choice to say, I'm going to work in roles that align with who I believe I am in this acting world because I know what I'm trying to accomplish here. And I feel like his career is one of those exercises in recognizing who he is, what his purpose is, and not letting that be subsumed under an industry that would happily happily, strip all the talent it can out of him in roles that would not serve him at all, right? And because he understands his purpose and who he is, I think he makes strategic choices about roles that he chooses to play that allow him to keep an alignment. Because, like I said, the man has a very Black centered repertoire, which I love. Um, and it's fascinating to watch him play these different characters so beautifully, so in depth in ways that bring so much nuance and complexity to the screen. And then sometimes he's also Killmonger in which is one of my favorite characters from Black Panther, and the depth there as well to the screen. But all that to say, when your purpose is not lost, when you understand who you are and what you hope to accomplish in this lifetime, then it's easy to kind of navigate the waves of life, right? Sometimes you're going to take some detours, and that's all right. But what you don't do is allow the world to dictate how your life is going to go, because you know what your purpose is. And as you stand on the cusp of a chapter, your purpose doesn't leave you, it gets stronger. Because the purpose of our lives doesn't wax and wane. The purpose of our lives isn't out in the distance waiting for us to go find it. The purpose of our lives isn't on a mountaintop. I mean, you can pilgrimage to the mountaintop, but you're not looking for your purpose. You're looking for a path, you're looking for a direction. And the mountaintop is another stop on the journey of looking for a direction. Your purpose got you to the mountaintop. Your purpose gets you over the mountaintop, down the other side, to the next part of the path that you need to walk on, because you understand what your purpose is. Your purpose may be to live a life that is a reflection of the peace that you feel inside of you. Your purpose may be to live a life that is full of compassion for yourself and others. Your purpose may be to pull your family generationally out of poverty. Your purpose is so integral to who you are, and it pains me how many people think they've lost it, think that it's not there, think that it's outside of themselves. And so they run towards all of these self-help gurus and these programs and these books, hoping that someone will tell them what their purpose is. And what they really want and what they really, really need is someone to tell them it's okay that they live in the purpose that they always knew they had. So it is okay to live in the purpose that you've always known that you had. And it's okay to switch paths in your life and do different things without thinking that you're somehow have lost your purpose for why you're here. You haven't lost your purpose for why you're here. You woke up this morning, and instinctively your body knew why you were supposed to be here, because it woke up, right? It got you out of bed again. It's not lost on the body, the physiological body, that we are here for a reason. Like, we're all cylinders are still working. It is only our internal compass that we feel like is spinning out of control, that hasn't settled on our North Star, that pushes us to go find someone to tell us where our North Star is supposed to be, as opposed to stopping for a moment and looking at the totality of what we've always been drawn to, what we've always gravitated towards, the causes, the people, the professions, the hobbies, the spiritualities, the metaphysics, the religions, whatever, wherever your attention has constantly returned back to, probably has the answer for you of what your purpose is. And it's probably always been there. You did not lose it. It is not somewhere outside of yourself. I want to end this by saying, in times of great cultural upheaval, when people are moving around and trying to figure out what is their part in the grand scheme of things, as the unraveling of one stitch happens on one side of the cosmic blanket and another stitch starts forming on the other side of the cosmic blanket, and you're trying to figure out, which side of this cosmic blanket am I supposed to be on, and how do I get to the side that makes me okay and keeps us safe. As cultural upheaval moves back and forth, people start questioning again, what is my purpose in this? And I would say to you, it is the same purpose that you had before the cultural upheaval. The pathways will be different. The history that you will make will be different, but your purpose for the work that you are set here to do, whatever that work may be. And by work, I don't mean a job. You know what I mean. The purpose of the work that you have been set here to do, that is always going to be within you. And it is still here. You have not lost it. It is simply time to figure out, what is the path that my work needs to be on now? That's it. That's your job, is to work the purpose and the path that your purpose puts you on for this particular chapter of your life. Knowing the chapter may come to an end, knowing you might have to shift the path again, but the purpose will keep you moving forward in ways that will bring you closer to the life that you think that you want to live than chasing somebody else's purpose and constantly having to be told that you are not good enough because you didn't follow their purpose to its logical end, which, by the way, following somebody else's purpose generally leads to you being broke and broken. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. This is a much more philosophical perspective this morning, but I really wanted to talk about this because I feel like in the midst of a lot of noise and chaos in the world, people start asking questions like, why are we here? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to get through this? And they seek answers that can be beneficial and helpful, but can also be exploitative and destructive. And so I would ask you to pull back and remember who you are, what you are drawn to, where you have found your footing before, and return there. Set your feet down, take a breath, take a thought that is your own, and pause. And I think you will find that your purpose starts to speak to you in something more than just a whisper. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. It's Dr. Sasheen. Please hit like, subscribe, and share the video, as the YouTube algorithm is really all about the interaction with the video and not just the viewing hours. I know, strangely enough. Tune in for next Sunday. Excuse me. Yes, we're starting a new project here. Tune in soon. We're starting a new project called So Now What? The Next Chapter of Life. Hopefully we will see you in those videos. And Tuesdays, we meet live on YouTube at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. It's called the Tuesday Tea Break. We get together, we chit chat, we put a buffer around us, and we lock out the drama for at least 30 minutes. And we just have something good to drink and connect. Because in the social media world, a lot of people have forgotten what it's like to be social and to just enjoy each other's company for a few minutes and not have to be doom scrolling or trauma dumping. So if you decide to check out Tuesday Tea Break with us, bring yourself, bring your drink, bring your conversation, but leave your drama at the door. This is Dr. Sasheen again. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.